This month in the Flower Revolution, we are working with the Radiance Orchid, one of the most stunningly beautiful orchids I've ever seen in the wild. A beautiful white orchid that looks like a lot of different interesting shapes, from a hood to an angel. And it is incredibly fragrant. One of the themes, the major themes with Radiance Orchid, is around loss and separation, or perceived loss and separation. I think one of probably the deepest patterns that we have as human beings is the sense that we're separate or alone, and that when people come in and out of our lives, that we experience a loss, versus what I think to be like the absolute reality, which is more this sense of inseparability. But until we attain the visceral experience of inseparability, we can work with flowers like Radiance Orchid to help us sort of unwire the patterns around separation and loss so that we can move closer to feeling this sense of inseparability. So one of the main lessons that this flower teaches is that when we experience loss, like a friend, a love, a family member, somebody moves and leaves to another country, we experience missing and longing. And then there's this part of us that doesn't want to let that person go because we feel like if we... it's a tricky concept. I'll just say you'll experience it as you go throughout this month, but there is a sense of ease that arises when we can face our own resistance of pain or loss and really look at what would it take for us to accept 500% the situation that we find ourselves in whenever we experience any kind of separation or loss. If we can directly turn our attention 500% toward this sensation, we find that the energy around it of resistance dissolves. And when we are actually able to look at it, very similar to like looking at the monster under your bed, it just dissolves. And so it may not dissolve the missing of a person, place, or thing, whatever the situation is, but it dissolves the tension around it, which gives us a kind of a new sense of wild freedom. It also brings in an element of really feeling divinely supported. You know, the sense of feeling connected to all of the trees and animals and place and environment and people in your life. And when you have that sensation, it really softens the fixation that we have on feeling loss and separation. It's interesting that this orchid is arising at this point in time. I think there may be many reasons why. It can be, you know, obviously in our personal lives, there may be somebody that you're experiencing a sense of loss around, or fear of loss. It doesn't even have to be loss. It can be fear of eventual loss or separation. But it can also relate to, you know, certain current events. I've heard a lot of stories of people who are, say, losing friendships or family members because of polarized views. And that seems to be arising a lot lately. So, or you may feel a sense of loss around the way things were, or separation in terms of not being able to travel. So you can look at it in terms of a context personally, working out those loss and you know, illusion of separation patterns, or it can be applied to sort of a more current timeline framework as a more collective consciousness issue that we are experiencing, this sense of loss of what we know things to be, or loss of something, maybe loss of things that don't work, and in the process, maybe feeling a little bit separate. So Radiance Orchid will bring in a lot of ease. And also I should mention that the support for this month is boundless wisdom, which, as you most likely know, is all about spacious awareness of the present moment. It's for any moments of transition or change. It brings in a lot of flexibility, a lot of boundless love, a sacred perspective, feeling like you're at the right place at the right time, and really being patient and flexible. So I find that when I'm going through processes of kind of recreating from the ground up after sensations of loss or separation, being patient and flexible is a really helpful tool. So question for this month, as you are working with the Radiance Orchid: when in your life have you experienced loss or a sense of separation, which could show up like loneliness or feeling alone or feeling cut off or left behind or missing out on something? How do you personally relate to those concepts? When does it arise?